Thank you very much for your time today. My name is Francis Braganza, and I am the F7 subject head. You've got your results. What happens next? The most important thing, of course, is the fact that you're in touch with the lecturer all the time. And if you have any problems, do please ask. In fact, even as we're doing this session, we have a little message board where we welcome questions. So welcome, and thank you for your time most especially. So 5 considerations I'd like to cover today. If you have passed, if you have failed, some key milestones, the exam paper strategy, and how you study, the mode of study. So if you can think of anything to ask, I'll keep an eye on the message board as well, so don't hesitate. It's a great privilege to be here and to help you get your desired result. If you have passed, I have to offer you my congratulations. Don't forget that it's very difficult to pass these ACCA exams, and each subject has got a huge syllabus, and you're competing against lots and lots of other people, and almost anything can come up in these exams. So if you have passed, you've got a winning habit, and as the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you've got a formula that works, stick with it, and I'm sure that'll see you through. Though there are lots of people who prefer the written papers, all papers are written of course, but the ones that have more words, and others prefer the ones that have numbers. In fact, the very fact that you've come into accountancy is possibly because you like numbers. So there are people who struggle with the written papers, others who struggle with the numerical papers. But ACCA, unfortunately, doesn't allow you to only do numbers. In fact, in most papers, you have a mixture. Obviously, in things like law and so on, it's mainly, well, it's all writing. So that's something to bear in mind. But as I say, if you have passed, I offer you my sincere congratulations. Now, it's also a good thing to consider what went right and wrong. Someone said to me recently, as you know, the results have only just come out. He said he got 59. And I said, you know, well done. 59 is 9 marks more than the pass mark. But what happened to the other 41? Because he was a very, very good student. And he looked a bit surprised by that. And I said, don't worry, you know, you've passed, and the big thing is to get your 50. But don't forget, you can do better and get better marks than 59. So, if you have failed, so we're not talking about people who've passed now, we're talking about people who've failed. A wise person once said, successful people see failure as a regular part of success, and they get over it. Failure is not the end, you see. Everything that you do is, in a sense, succeeding. It's telling you what not to do, as well as what to do. Effort only releases its reward after a person refuses to quit. Okay, so if you're practicing, if I can use a sporting illustration, if you're jumping over the hurdles and you drop one in practice, you know that next time you've got to jump high or bend low or whatever it is, get fitter, and then you won't drop those hurdles. So it's a bit like that, really. But don't ever think that failure is the end of the story. Most people who succeed have failed somewhere along the line in some way or other. Very few people sail through everything without any trouble in every walk of life. So if you have failed, well, accept it. Be real. I've got a student coming to see me tomorrow, and he sent me an email saying he got 18%. I mean 18. I didn't have the heart to say to him that's the lowest, one of the lowest I've ever heard, and 25 odd years of teaching. But he's going to come and see me, and in his email he says, I'll quote what he says, he answered all questions, he thinks correctly. So I'm going to say to him, sit down, be real. You can't have lost 82 marks and got only 18 if you've answered all questions and you think correctly. So something's wrong there. Either your version of what's correct is questionable, or please speak to me. You know, there's some problem there. What else can I say? Another guy said to me, I got 40% in F7, financial reporting, which is my subject. I got 40, and he said, what did he say? I lost just 10 marks. That's his words. I got 40, I lost just 10 marks. And I said to him, well, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you didn't lose 10 marks, you actually lost 60. Because there is a chance, certainly given the time frame of the exam and the amount of work you do and the way we cover things in class, you should have a chance of scoring much more than that, even 100%, if all goes well. People do get marks in the 90s, at least. So he hasn't lost 10 marks, he's actually lost 60. So, as I say, be real. What else can I say? Learn from it. Was it poor time management? One of the guys I was talking about just now who got an amazing mark, I remember, I tend to be very careful with timekeeping in class. If I have a 15-minute break, I make sure I respect that, because, you know, students have given up time to be there. And I remember once this fellow was a very good student, I could tell from the way he asked me questions and so on. I came back from the break about 15, 20 seconds later, chatting to a lecturer outside. And I remember him doing this. He picked up his watch and he looked at it and he recorded in his mind, lecturer 20 seconds late. So even though I said 15 minutes, I just happened to come back into class a few seconds late, but he recorded it, I could see that. When I saw that, I knew he'd passed, because time management would not be a problem. Do you know, more people fail because of time management than almost anything else. You know, they keep writing till they run out of ideas instead of being careful with time. Was it poor handwriting? It's quite possible. My friend who's coming to see me tomorrow, who got 18%, might have awful handwriting. Not being disrespectful, but you know, if it's not possible to read it. In fact, my examiner, the F7 examiner, was saying to us not long ago at one of these big conferences that some scripts were returned to him by the markers saying they didn't know what language it was in. And he said that included the numbers. So they were unable to read a single word or a single number. And he said obviously they had to give them 0. So do be careful. What's your handwriting like? Develop your skills. Write faster. I have a lady student who came to my recit class. We don't always have recits, but we sometimes do. And I said to her, I take scripts in to mark, that kind of thing, because, you know, I want to help people to pass. And I said, you know, we're near finishing these questions, and you write very slowly. And I kept an eye on her as I was asking them to do things in class, and I found her very slow. And I said to her, you know, you've got to improve your speed. She didn't take much notice of me and came back for the next recit. And by then I said to her, if you improve your speed, you'll pass, because you have the knowledge. It's a skill you have to. I know it's very difficult to write neatly as well as fast and well structured, but at least the basic execution of words and numbers, the handwriting, should be of reasonable speed. It takes a bit of practice, because most of us spend our time doing, not so much me because I'm a lecturer, but most of us spend time doing, using a keyboard, and it's hard to write for 3 hours, just the energy required for that and the concentration. But just basic speed could be your problem. So I'd like you to feel that you can retake the exam with confidence. Remember, this stuff is tough. Use this as a springboard. Learn from your mistakes. The other thing is to accept it. Don't dwell on the past. It's one of those things, not everyone passes everything first time. Can't do much about it. It's been and gone. As I was coming to the studio to record this, someone stopped me and said, "Francis, I'm so sorry, I got 44%. Shall I ask for a remark?" And I said, well, if you got 49, that's a different matter. But if you get 44, you're quite a bit off the 50% minimum. So I said, just come back to class and take it seriously this time. Do enough homework, practice, that kind of thing. So it's not, not all my students get 44 and 40 and 18, but these are just 3 instances I bring up because we're talking about failure here. So the pass marks are, pass rates, I should say. The pass mark, of course, is 50. Pass rates hover around 35 to 40. So how can I give you an example? F5, for example, very clever paper, performance management, 39% this last June. F6, 53. F7, my paper, 47. Not my pass rate, otherwise I would have been thrown out, but it's the internet worldwide pass rate, 47. F8, lots of people do F7 and F8 at the same time, 40. F9, 40. And so it goes on till you come to something like P5, Advanced Performance Management, where 29% pass. So that's quite low. That also means 71 fail. Somehow that seems worse. So the pass rates are not high. And so if you fail, there's no great shame in it. Just do it again. When you're qualified, does anyone really care whether you took F5 twice or 3 times? You qualified. You've got those coveted letters after your name. Surely that's what matters. And indeed, with a failure or 2, your personality might develop, and you may be a kinder person, more tolerant, and you realize failure is part of success. So approach it in a very wholesome way and don't beat yourself up too much because of that. The pass rates are low, and it is an incredibly hard qualification to get. And once you do, and we'll make sure you do, you can look back at the odd hurdle being dropped and laugh at it. So learn from it, as I say. Why did it happen? Were you too flustered in the exam? For example, why did it happen? I was trained up as a lecturer years ago by a very famous auditing examiner, ACCA examiner called Emil Wolf. He set up this huge college, and he used to write articles. So this is an article, a quotation, a little while ago now, but I think it is applicable today. I'll just read out a few words, what he says. For example, how to not get flustered. He says, allow plenty of time to get to the examination hall, but once in the vicinity, in the area, read the newspaper or have a coffee. Outside the hall, you will see hundreds of students who have ignored my advice. They are in a state of ill-suppressed hysteria. Smile, but keep cool. They are frantically tearing through pages of notes and books. You're casually looking at the sports pages or whatever pages you want to read of your morning newspaper. The exam hall double doors open to reveal row upon row of desks, and your frantic colleagues rapidly fill them. In fact, some are almost injured in the stampede to get to their desks. You sit down quietly and observe that the character on your right has a wild look in his eye, and has already scribbled half a page of his first answer. You draw in the first of your 10 controlled breaths, gaze fixed upon the tip of your nose. As you read calmly through question 1, the silence is broken by the wild man on your right. He's ripping up the first page of his answer. So obviously this was written before the days of the 15-minute reading time. But it is something to bear in mind. We're not looking for perfection, we're just looking for 50%, really. So that should be achievable. So keep calm in the exam, okay? Be well prepared. What else? Be honest with yourself. Whenever I do a resit course, we don't always run resit courses because we sometimes don't have enough students to run resit courses where the pass rates are very good. But sometimes when we do, I say to them on the first day, get out a piece of paper and write out why you think you failed. Be honest with yourself. Was it timekeeping? Was it handwriting? Was it some personal problem that I don't want to know about it, but just think of some reason. But be honest with yourself. And the other reason why I ask them to do it, oh, by the way, I say to them, you don't have to put your name down, it's up to you, but I'd love to take it in. And the other reason I tell them to do it, of course, apart from them working out why they failed, is I know how to tailor my course to suit their needs. So I say to them, be honest with yourself, write out on a piece of paper, if you can hand it to me, that'd be great, why you think you failed. If it means blaming the lecturer, that's fine, but you must be honest with yourself. The other thing I must say, what will you do differently next time? You see? And yes, you must change. There is no option. Now, I wrote something for PQ magazine, one of the famous magazines recently, and I'd love to read it out to you if you've got a second. I was talking about F7 and generally about ACCA exam questions. My impression at times is that we live, this is me speaking to students through the medium of PQ magazine, my impression at times is that we live in a lottery generation. Many students aware of the 25 plus accounting standards in the vast F7 syllabus ask me which ones they should study. Reading between the lines, they are saying to me, what are the lucky numbers to win? In other words, mention 2 accounting standards out of the 25 plus that we have, and I will study just those 2. And if you think about it, the examiner is trying to cover the entire syllabus, because even though you and I only want to get the 50%, the ACCA's ideal is much higher than that, and that is you've got to know something about the subject before they let you through, because one day you have to carry those coveted letters behind your name, and you don't want to bring the ACCA into disrepute. So they want you to learn something as well, which is why they cover the entire syllabus. So a student who goes around saying, I just want to study 2 accounting standards, will come unstuck. And that's true of any paper, really. So you must change. Develop your skills. Now, what's the mode of study? Can you manage full-time courses? I was saying to someone only a couple of hours ago that I'm doing, every Thursday I do my F7 typically on a long-term course, and on another day my tax colleague will be doing her tax and management accounting or whatever else it might be on another day. And I was chatting to a student, I said, you seem to be quite good at published accounts, preparing final accounts. He said, oh yeah, I do this every day. I'm on day release. In other words, my boss gives me Thursday off to come and attend your lectures. And so he's developing a bit of practical experience while doing exams. So if you can get leave, that'd be marvelous. Come to our full-time courses. It gives you a little bit more time, but more about that in a few minutes. Time management in the exam. Again, I don't want to be in any way, critical, but I had a lady student in my class who, every time I gave them a 15-minute break or a 45-minute lunch break, she would come back, let's say after the 15-minute break, she'd come back 25 minutes after the break, breathless. It was usually with a friend. And I go to the exam hall in a private capacity, not wearing a tie or anything like that, and just to encourage students any last-minute queries they might have. So I go to the biggest London hall. I've done that for years and years, every 6 months. And I remember seeing this lady he used to come back from all the breaks at least 10 minutes late, 5 or 10 minutes late, sometimes more than that. I mean, every break for 3 months. So I'm standing in that hall. They're supposed to get in by 10 o'clock in the morning in London, and at about 10:25, maybe 10:30, the same lady who came late after every break, I saw her rushing past, breathless, and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I didn't say a word, and she was absolutely flustered, and I said to myself, she's going to fail. And I wish I'd said to her in class, why do you come back from the break late every time? You'll do that in the exam. And there she was, and of course she failed. But she passed the next time when she was a bit more careful with her timekeeping. So time management in the exam, arriving on time, stopping after a certain length of time on questions, all that is absolutely crucial. Distractions. Can you concentrate when people around you are making a noise? Going back to my final exams, Advanced Management Accounting, I did the ICAW exam, similar to ACCA. All exams are equally hard, but this was a hard paper, and here was I, desperate to pass, and management accounting, we had to do a break-even point calculation. As I'm getting close to the point, this fellow on my right crunches into a little mint, a polo mint. And I was so absorbed by this guy. I shouldn't have been. I should have been, able to cope with distractions. So I carried on with my question, and at the moment I came to the point where I was about to crack the question, he bit into a polo mint. And at one point I was going to say to him, do you mind? You're enjoying it, but I'm not. But I couldn't speak like that. I'll be thrown out of the hall, and I'm glad I didn't. But it's just exam stress. Can you concentrate under pressure is the point. And it is difficult. So you somehow need to cope with distractions. It's a huge hall in some countries. Some countries, of course, you have smaller exam centers, but very often it's very big. Think about how you are studying, you see. More about that in a few minutes. And you must change. Retakes, don't skip it. Some people say, well, I got 45 and I don't want to come on a course again. Others say, well, I got 45 despite all my efforts. Next time I'm going to not do F6, whatever it might be, tax, and I'm going to give it a break. But of course by then the legislation has changed, and the exam format might have changed, and the person's at a huge disadvantage. So don't skip it. I would suggest if you have narrowly failed, just do the exam again the next time. If you can come on a course, that'll make sure you do pass. Clearly, if you've got close to 50, you have some knowledge. Speak to the lecturer. All of us have a very open style. We are career lecturers, so this is our livelihood, and we are, very keen on helping students. So anything at all, you must come and ask, so we can guide you through based on our own success as candidates years ago. Don't be in denial if you are resitting. You did fail, so don't pretend that you failed that sitting and you'll always pass. So what else can I say? Key focus. The nice thing about these resit courses or these retakes is the lecturers will speak about the exam ahead of us and ahead of you, rather than churn out the same lectures all the time. So all lecturers, all class notes tend to refocus on the coming exam. I change my class notes every 6 months, even though it takes the best part of a week to do it properly. And the odd typo and little improvement in presentation as well takes time. But every time we sit, or we prepare students for sitting an exam, we lecturers at LSBF tend to change our class notes and improve them. And everything can be improved, and I certainly spent a lot of time on that. One other thing I must not forget to say is confront the paper and bring it under your control. You are the person who must pass. Some of these syllabi are huge, and you've got to somehow feel that you're on top of it. And more about that in a few minutes. So, some key milestones. If you are just completing foundation, that's great. The skills papers are very different, you see. There's less objective testing, more longer questions. For example, in F7 you have a 30-mark question, 2 15-markers and a 30-marker. So you have 20 2-mark questions, that's 40 marks, 2 15-markers and then a 30-marker. So you can imagine what a 30-marker must be like, 54 minutes, so nearly an hour. And so these huge questions, if you're going to tackle them, you've got to practice beforehand. And certainly in the exam hall, you've got to be a little bit careful not to overrun the time. So that's one big thing about the skills papers. Unlike the foundation level, they do have much bigger questions. You have to get used to that. It's not computer-based, except obviously for F4, corporate and business law. And there's more an application of skill, more an application. So that's something to bear in mind. What else can I say? Some key milestones. If you're completing foundation and you've completed F6, it's extremely important for me to make this point. If you're going in for this Oxford Brookes degree, remember to opt in now, and they'll count your marks for F7, F8, etc. Towards your degree. So you've got to inform them beforehand and register. It'd be lovely to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak, by clearing your ACCA and doing your Oxford Brookes at the same time. So do be careful that once you finish your F6, before you start your F7, 8, 9, etc., do register with Oxford Brookes if you wish to get a degree, a BSc in accounting. What else can I say? Other key milestones. Once you've completed your F6 and you've completed your skills takes you up to F9. And beyond that, obviously, you have your core professional papers. They're very different. You have things like professional marks. In your answer, do you come across as a professional? You know, what's your presentation like? How do you approach an argument? Are you thinking about the issue, or are you just churning out something you've learned from a textbook? The general appearance of your paper, these are little professional marks. It varies between papers. The more written papers, the more calculation papers, they're different, but there are professional marks, so you must capture those. You'll find that all the lecturers in LSBF are well versed with this. We tend to spend time with the examiner and so on, and so they will tell you where the marks lie. So be careful. The other thing I'd say about the professional papers, there's more analysis than application. If I go back to something like F6, F7, tax, and obviously F7, financial reporting, the lecturers will teach you a format and show you how to do, let's say, consolidations. And you practice it in class and you hone your skills. You go into the exam and you'll get something very similar, maybe a little bit of a tweak on the edges where you have to use your imagination. But the basic method, you see, is well practiced in class, and you just apply that in the exam. But when it comes to the professional papers, it isn't as mechanical as that. You have to do more analysis. And in fact, there's a paper called Business Analysis, and that gives you an idea as to what the paper is about. It has a very low pass rate usually. It's a hard paper to pass because people have to write, they have to analyze rather than just apply rules. And that's the difference between the skill level and the professional level. And certainly as a qualified ACCA, you will be acting as a professional. And so that's why they call it the professional level. They're chunkier questions. Some of them are huge case studies. I look at some of the work my colleague David Laws does, and I'm amazed how big his questions are. And I wonder whether my students going up to do his paper will be able to cope with the volume of information and to synthesize it, to work out what to do and say. And it does worry me a little bit, but again, he's a brilliant lecturer and has been trained as a teacher, and he has ways of coping and explaining to students how to excel. So unfortunately, more words means a lower pass rate. And so you've got to get over that by being better at the words. So, Tina, thank you. Interested in the professional level. And we're talking about the professional level at the moment. Thanks for your question. Some more key milestones. Once you've completed your foundation and F6 and you're registered for Oxford Brookes if you want to, you then have completed the skills. You now have to continue with your professional core. A few more ideas. You have to choose. My colleague Carolyn Napier, who's our top tax expert, she's a subject head for tax. I believe she is doing a session tomorrow, as far as I'm aware, on how to choose your options. So I shouldn't say too much. She will bring to you her brilliant lecturing style. You have a flavor of that as well. And of course, her years of knowledge about why you choose certain option papers. So have a look at her. If you don't have a chance of seeing her live, do please have a look at the video subsequently. But you'll enjoy everything she does. So where should we go with this? The key milestones, therefore: completing the foundation, completing F6, you've completed skills, completed the professional core. And so I must ask, if you are a past finalist, why are you watching this? This is meant mainly for people who haven't qualified yet. So some strategy then, how to go about coping with failure, or indeed having passed, how to move on. So what's the exam paper strategy? My first and most important request to you, if at all possible, is follow the numbers. The logic is the order is there for a reason. Now, I feel very passionately about this because when I do my financial reporting on F7, we have a bit of law, you see, F4. Things like, share premium and share capital and distributable profits and safeguarding the company's interest by not paying out too much as dividends and these kinds of things, much more than that, of course. And so people will come to F7 having jumped around, and so in class I have to spend time in my class notes, in class, privately, brushing up on bits and pieces from F4. And I always say I wish people would just follow the numbers. Once you've done F4, you do F5, you do F6. Come to F6 for a second, that's tax. In F7, there's a topic called deferred tax, depends on knowledge of capital allowances and so on. And again, when I'm doing these subjects like F7, unfortunately, I have to start from scratch, assuming they don't do tax. And then I have to explain capital allowances so that I can follow that through onto F7's requirements. But I just say to myself, I wish students would have followed the numbering sequence like ACCA requires. It just makes the lecturer's job easier, but 100 times more important, makes the student's life easier rather than wasting time on bits and pieces that some know, some don't know, and therefore the lecturer has to cover it. If they did it in the right sequence, they would be past all these little problems. And of course, in the exam, you're still accosted by things that might have been covered at earlier papers, and there you would have deepened your understanding had you cleared F4, F5, F6 before you come to F7, for example. Equally, when you do F8, my colleagues do audit and assurance. Lots of the accounting standards from F7 help for that, help towards that. And it makes it so much more sense to follow the numbering sequence. So that's really, really important. Gabby, thanks for your question. I'll be coming to the computational stuff in just a second, if you'll give me just 5 minutes. We do cover it somewhere. Prior knowledge is important. And the other thing, of course, is you have to do them anyway. So if you jump around, not following the sequence, you do your F9 and then you go back to doing F6 or F5. It seems so silly. You still have to do all the papers. You might as well do them in sequence. That would be my strong recommendation. So, moving on, the exam paper strategy, follow the numbers. So, some people don't take that advice and they try to mix or match. And so, just to answer Gabby's question, thank you for that. Either mix or match computational with discursive. Now, F4 and F5, F4 as you know is law, and that's all writing. So, words. Whereas F5, even though there's plenty of writing and discussion and report writing and ratio analysis, interpretation, all that kind of thing, it is predominantly numerical. So it'd be a nice mix doing the written stuff of F4 and studying F5 at the same time. F6 and F8, F6 is very, very numerical. F8 is all writing, or most of it is. And analytical review obviously requires some ratios and numbers but in F8. But certainly F6 being numerical mainly goes quite nicely with the F8. And so it goes on, a couple more examples there. Another way to do it, I suppose, is to go through from F4 to F8. These are students who don't want to follow the numbers, because you can imagine F4 covers company law, among other things, and F8 for auditing requires knowledge of law. So that's not a bad thing to do together. 6 and 7 because it's dominated by formats. That could be a way of doing it. F5 and F9, need I say, are linked. So, further strategy, follow the numbers or mix and match and see if you can follow through. Now, what do I mean by follow through? Use prior knowledge before you forget it. Now, the best example I can think of, apart from F2 to F5, that's a really good one, F3 to F7, of course, but let's say F7 to P2. I'm familiar with those two areas. My colleague Martin Jones, he teaches P2, and very engaging lecturer, absolutely brilliant chap, brilliant lecturer, very, very successful in what he does. And if a new accounting standard comes out, he'll contact me, we'll have a coffee together, and we'll say, look, I'm going to go about it in this way, what do you think? One of us makes a suggestion and the other one discusses it, and we follow a common method. And so the student who passes the lower level F7 with me isn't shocked by some new method in P2. But of course the lecturers have got to spend time getting these methods together. So that's what we do as a team. So you'll find that in LSBF there's a lot of that going on. There should be consistency because the student comes first, really. Now, the other thing is if you do F7 and P2 together, that also is a bad thing. The examiner was saying that something like 95% of people who do the lower F7 with the P2 higher up, P2 is corporate reporting, F7 is financial reporting. Many people think, well, if I can attend the P2 lectures, I'll easily pass F7. The fact of the matter is they fail both because they use the wrong knowledge for the wrong level, foreign currency in the wrong level, etc. So I'd strongly advise against mixing P levels with F levels unless you absolutely have to at the end of, let's say, when you're doing your F9. But wherever possible, get your Fs done first, do them in the right order, and then move on to the P levels. That's what I would do if I was a student. I didn't do the ACCA exams, as I was saying. I did the Chartered Accountancy ICAW, which is, Slightly different in some ways, but I'm glad I did actually, because in those days that was the hardest qualification. In those days. They're all as bad these days. Okay, exam paper strategy, a few ideas there. Another possibility is, if you know about a star tutor, use him or her while you know you can. Now, we've been very privileged in LSBF to have a very stable lecturing team, and people tend not to leave of their own accord unless there's some family reason or whatever. And so we have a tremendous continuity, and that's a great privilege to work in a team like that. Indeed, in the last couple of years, we've had 9 lecturers, or was it 8 or 9, something like that, lecturers joining us from other colleges like BPP and Kaplan and so on, experienced lecturers. So the team is getting extremely strong, and it's a great privilege for me to be part of that team when I see the star lecturers around. There's a very good, someone was talking there about Rob Sarby is fantastic. I agree with that. And a very good sense of humor, and able to cope with different levels, F levels, P levels, with equal facility. Another brilliant lecturer I was saying to you earlier is the tax lecturer who does F6 and P6, Carolyn Napier, Paul Marison, and there's so many people you've heard of. We're greatly privileged to have them working in our team, but be careful that groups get filled quite quickly if you're following a name like that. But do ask fellow students who you think is good in whichever subject, and you should get an honest opinion. But that's the other thing, you see, if you are doing the F level on, let's say, tax, and you like Carolyn, our tax subject head, and she is available to do P6 on the day that you are free, you might as well follow her through. And that keeps you get used to her lecturing and so on. You've done well at F6, why not use her for P6? That kind of thing. Or Paul Marison, if you're good on F8, you did well with him, why not move to him for P7 when the time arrives? Because you're used to him by then, and he's proven to you that he can get you through and get you a good mark. So that's another way of going about these things. Just Chen says he wants to do F5 and F9, and Tina says, I think I'll follow the numbers. What do you think? My personal feeling is follow the numbers. These people who run ACCA, I'm always very impressed with how good they are at education. The top lady is a PhD in education, I can't remember her name, and I'm so impressed when they speak, and I just think, gosh, these people really understand what makes ACCA work. And these are the brains that have put together the sequence, the numerical sequence. And that's why I would strongly suggest to students, just follow the sequence. Okay, if you've got exempted from the odd one, that's fine. Just move on. But if at all possible, follow the F1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of sequence. I agree with you there, Tina. What else? What else? Exam paper strategy. The day of the week is another little issue, I suppose. What's the logic here? You have to plan your studies around your life, so base everything around your life. Now that looks a bit selfish, the wording there, but it is true. Yes, one of the things with our directors at LSBF, because they lecture as well, people, the decision makers, they tend to say the person, yes, the student comes first, and we tailor our courses with that huge word flexibility always in mind. So if the student has domestic issues and can't study, can't attend lectures or whatever it might be, looking after a baby, for example, she can watch it online. She can come to weekends, that kind of thing. So we tend to draft our courses in such a way that it gives you maximum flexibility, especially if you're doing part-time course and you've got other commitments. So base everything around your life, because even though it is hard, It is hard to find time to study if you've got a busy life, work and family and so on, and friends, if you have any friends doing ACCA. But if, let's say you do, keep up with a few friends, it is hard finding time to study, but it is worthwhile in the end, let me assure you. So flexibility is the word that this college believes in. So how about mode of study? We were saying just now you could do home study. We can do class-based study, etc. So I'm going to take you through some of these. And of course, live online. The online really is the way things are going. Yes, it's becoming harder and harder for people to attend local lectures, and so we offer things online. It's such a privilege for a lecturer as well to be able to do that. A little while ago, I had an email from a student, a lady in Nigeria, thanking me for the lectures, and she said she used to watch my recordings on something called deferred tax. Didn't understand it the first time, watched it a second time, watched it a third time, eventually understood it. And she said, what motivated me to listen to your lectures again and again is my little 3-year-old son, and he likes your jokes, and so he's telling me to watch it, because the little fellow thinks me, Francis, is some television presenter or some news reader. So with little fellow's motivation, the lady kept watching the videos again and again, and this email says she passed and she got 85% online. That's why I believe online is where things are going. And it's possible for someone who's never met me, except through the medium of a video, and of course the odd email, who can get 85% in the exam. Can you believe it? In fact, she said that the little fellow wants to come to London when she visits to meet me, and because he feels he knows me. So that's the other exciting thing for the lecturers. We feel we get to know you, and even though you may be in a country very far away. So live online, more about that in a minute. Home study. Obviously, that's if you're dedicated. You have to, as I was saying to you earlier, our directors are very much into flexibility. It's a flexible way of studying that works well for the dedicated student, but you've got to be really disciplined with time and not be distracted with other things that you might have to do. So that's one way of studying, home study. In fact, years ago when I was a student, we only had home study, correspondence courses, a famous course called Fuchs Lynch. You might have heard of it, or your boss might have. And we would be sent chapters of class notes. We would study it, do a test, send it back in the post, and it would come back marked. That's how we studied. And so people are still into that traditional way of studying. I would suggest, if it's possible, combine home study with some online lectures. And then you have the vitality, it focuses your mind more, it engages you more. So I would suggest try to think about online together with home study rather than just reading a set of notes. Class-based full-time, as I was saying, some people come to my classes on a day release basis, which is great. And good marks, good. Brigitte Petrova there, one of our very best lecturers, great personality. And there someone got 63 with her. Paul, of course, with his red hair and huge personality and jokes and good brain as well, 64%. And the biggest thing is in this college we are encouraged to be ourselves, write our own notes, be as creative as we can, and rather than just reading from someone else's notes that has been prepared and handed down. So we are encouraged to write our own notes, or certainly make suggestions to the subject head. And so it's very much an involving thing. And so I'm glad people are doing well attending those lectures. All right, what else can I say? Mode of study. class-based part-time. If you've got an experienced lecturer in front of you, you can only attend evenings and weekends, let's say. It'll help you to structure your studying. For example, on my subject, I do the evenings and the weekends. So I say to students, why do, I say to my bosses, why do a lecture sequence, a course plan for the evenings and the weekend? Why don't I put them together? And that's exactly what I've done here. For example, to help you mix and match, and if you miss lectures, Thursday the 4th of September evening is equal to Sunday the 7th of September morning, for example. And so it goes on. It gives you exactly what topics I'm going to be doing for classwork, what's for homework. It gives you dates for your revision courses and so on. So even though you're doing things part-time, I was a part-time student myself, so many of us were, and so we fully understand that we have to help students by allowing them to attend an evening they might have missed on the weekend, the topic, or vice versa. So all that is carefully planned. So what else? Moving on to the online. This is again a very flexible method of study that works well for the dedicated student, as it says there. And the wonderful thing is we've been put into studios like the one I'm operating in today, with a red tie, and ladies wear a scarf, and the college presentation uniform, if you like. And we record the entire set of class notes. So if for some reason the online abbreviated version doesn't appeal to you, you have access to this library of pre-recorded lectures, which are done at a slower pace than the online. So all that is available to you once you register. And that's again the director's thinking. Let's serve our students as best we can, rather than running it for profit only, like some places do. So that's a great thing that I certainly subscribe to. Let's do this as a service industry. Let's make these things available, give them passwords and so on that students can attend if they miss something. The other huge development recently is we tend to make our part-time course program follow exactly the same sequence as our online. So if a student were to miss Saturday and can't attend the equivalent evening, he or she can pick it up on the online platform. So that's again a huge improvement, consistency with the service for students in mind. That library of videos extremely useful. What else? Online is absolutely wonderful. So we have the interactive recordings available to you. That's called online. And then, of course, we have the live online, which is another thing altogether. That one, if I could just explain for a second, is where we have, for example, 8 evenings of 2 hours each. And as some of you know, I'll do it, for example, this sort of time of day in London 6 to 8 in the evening, and someone's listening to me in Canada or in the West Indies, Caribbean, early in the morning. Equally, when I'm doing it at 6 o'clock in London, someone may be watching it very late at night in Mauritius, Malaysia, places like that. So they send me questions, and I try to answer them as best I can. We also have a mentor that is a qualified accountant who can answer some of the easier questions. So we keep looking at it, even though I lose a little bit of eye contact. It's a good thing to be able to answer questions that are fired at me. So live online is a wonderful course. I've just made a note here of a couple of marks I'm aware of. Not everyone's responded, has sent their marks in, but someone got 79, a student in Kenya. Again, never met him. sent me the odd detailed question to answer. Results come out in the last week, 79%. Someone else, 74%. Again, never met these people, but they are getting extremely good marks, even though they're far away, and the reason is they're studying either through interactive or live online. So live online is, as the word says, it is live. So all that is available to you. But the biggest thing of all is many of us have many, many, many years of experience. I myself have been teaching for more than 25 years, and thousands have passed with me. And so if you failed, well, you know, if you follow what I'm saying, my methods, etc., you should follow the 28 whatever thousand people have passed with me in the past. So, you know, what's one more person? And we always give you our email addresses and so on. The same for all lecturers, just put their name in at the front. And we'll be delighted to help you in any way at all. So let's see what question here. Ahmed is saying, I tried evenings, but online is so much easier for me because they are also recorded. That's true. So we have a superb team working on the technology and the recordings. We have lighting experts, sound experts. We have an American guy, extremely talented, and many other great motivators in this team. And quite apart from the support we get as lecturers in the recording studios, we have superb managers who run our interactive and online courses and do the admin and the answering students' queries with regard to admin, etc. So we have tremendous support, and so as a lecturer myself, I'm just part of a huge team, and all of us are equally important to the student passing. So never worry about that. But any complaints, any problems, do give us a shout and we'll be delighted to help. And the simple truth is, once you have studied online, you may question why you ever went to college. Because you see a lecturer, you're based in some far-off place, maybe even in England, and you don't have to travel into London. Just watch it online. The results are amazingly good, but provided you accept that the length of the online courses by definition can't be very, very long in terms of duration, 16 hours, that kind of thing. But you do have these library of videos to back it up for chapters that aren't covered. And so if you take them together, the live online is a superb, or any kind of online studying is a superb way of getting through. Saves all that travel and other bother like visas and whatever else people might need to get. I certainly am extremely thrilled to think that as I'm lecturing here in London, people are listening to me all over the world. That itself motivates me to try hard and prepare clearer answers and present properly, etc. Because we're all, as I was saying, career lecturers. And this is our job. So in summary, we're coming to the end of our hour together. Thank you for your time, by the way. Very, very kind of you. Get organized, get studying, work hard. I always like to say to my students, it's not about pretty presentation and so on. Of course, if you can do that as well, that's great. The examiner is more interested in the depth of your roots than the height of your branches. In other words, you've got to be solid in your foundation. You've got to show you understand what you're doing, rather than making it look like a beautiful script. Of course, that is a bonus. And then you will pass. And again, from my article in PQ Magazine, I'll just quote something. It is worth quoting the legendary golfer Gary Player, who, on being asked if his recent win was because of luck, is reputed to have said, "Yes, the more I practice, the luckier I get." So don't forget, hard work is behind many of these great performers. Another example, when you see the ex-Wimbledon champion, Andy Murray, if you see his vastly improved backhand, he's not trying it out on the day for the first time. This is the tennis player. He's not trying out his backhand for the first time on the day. He has honed that skill by hitting perhaps 150,000 backhands in practice. It's like doing several consolidations before you can master it, or whatever else, tax computations and so on that you might have, or planning audit answers. So it's extremely important to practice, work hard. And of course, my advice to you, especially if you're resitting or you're looking ahead at this huge collection of questions, never give up. As a famous politician once said, a famous leader once said, never give up, never, never give up, never, never, never give up. Thank you for your time.